A revolutionary. Say whoa. Trap revolutionary. Got the wave of too scary. Doing this thing like Malcolm ain't by any means necessary. We ain't got it by no one seen hand. We got the master plan. Get the move.
What's going on, y'all? Y'all want to do this video real quick. Talk about, culture, like black people having a culture. A lot of people say that, black people don't have a culture. But, I'm of the opinion that we do have a culture. It's a number of things that we do. A number of things actually we've created, since we've been here, that we have a culture that basically we're, here in this land that we already had. We brought culture with us, from Africa, coming from, the motherland or whatever. And then we also created a culture while we've been here. So, and then I just hear people out there saying, black people don't have a culture, and like, it's, so basically like saying we don't have a hit. Basically, it's like we don't have a history, right? We don't have we don't have anything to hold on to in any form of a shared, because what a culture is a shared system of beliefs, values, customs, and behaviors that a group practices every day, that they learn and they share and they pass down from, one generation to the next. So that's culture, right? So we have, we already had a culture, here that we practice, and one of them being, reverence for our ancestors, right? Respect for our elders. That's a culture. That is a practice. That's what we do. Most of us, here, we learn that, that's ingrained in us. I don't know other cultures, that do that. But one thing is that I know that we are big on. Black people here, we've been taught, that has been passed down, and like respect for your elders is a big thing. I know especially my parents like taught us that, what I'm saying? Matter of fact, man, this is a story like, like me, I ain't gonna lie, what I'm saying? I was a hard hit. I was a kid that got out of whipping, but my brother, he got the worst whooping I ever seen, man. My mama whooped his butt when he was a kid. Scared me, what I'm saying? He never got whooping, but he told my uncle no. That's all I remember, man. And she whooped him up and down the house. For telling my uncle no, because my parents, my mom, my uncle and, uncles and aunts and, grandmama, granddad or whatever, that's what they believe in, like respect your elders. My mom, they, like I said, that was a big thing to her, like so my dad, and, especially like I said, my mom's, just her side of the family or whatever, just always, she said that, what I'm saying, you respect, your elder, you respect, your grown-ups, so that was major. So I would say that's part of our culture, respect for our elders, respect basically, and I would, say respect for our ancestors. Also, what I'm saying, respect for those who came before us and those who have passed on, that's it's somewhat not so much of a culture, but it is. But I think that is something that we have to, we have identified with, but in a sense we haven't identified with in that sense. But it is part of our culture. You know what I'm saying? It's probably on a smaller level because some of us we haven't, some of us kind of got to where we don't, understand that, the respect for our elders, yes, but in a sense we're not taught that, but that is a part of, of our culture, in that sense, respect for our elders, and then, those that have passed, what I'm saying, on, we do give a reverence, what I'm saying, to our, like our grandmothers, grandfathers were great, grandfathers, grandmothers, whatever. We do give reverence in that sense, but I don't think we just really understand it because we're not taught, and I guess in this society, the Western aspect of it, it tries to teach us that, or it kind of makes us feel like it's not as important, right? But like I said, in some families we do, you know, give reverence to those that have passed, on before us. Um, Another thing, I would say, even in the revolutionaries, in that sense, we don't see it, but we know it. We've been taught it. We come across it. They teach us about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They show us in a passive sense. They show us him in a passive sense, but you know we know we're doing further studies. Some of us have uncovered the fact that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a revolutionary, and actually, when he started to change his mindset, toward the war, Vietnam, as well as trying to get reparations. He was actually about to go do a tent city at the Capitol, and basically like, hey, where's our reparations at? Y'all are paying farmers or subsidizing farmers not to farm and cutting them a check, but y'all have not cut black people a check for reparations. See, that's another thing. People they don't mention that. So he was, in that sense, and a prolific orator. So I would say that too. That the revolutionaries we don't talk about, or recognize in that sense, but that's part of our culture. We know about Malcolm. We know about the Black Panthers. And I would say in a historical sense, some of our people don't know though. Like about the Gullah Wars. That were fought in regards to freeing our people. You know what I'm saying? So it was a concerted effort. Part of the Seminole Wars, or our people, had maroon counties escaping out of slavery, getting with our Seminole, brothers, in Florida, and fighting against slavery. You know what I'm saying? So that was a major thing. And some of these, like what they'll call Indian Wars or whatever, they actually were stated. And as this lieutenant colonel, that stated, hey, these are really, Negro wars. We're coming down here fighting, um, you know, to basically get enslaved, African people that escaped from slavery to retrieve them, but then they're fighting back, um, along with our brothers and sisters, like I said, our Seminole brothers and sisters in Florida. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what they started doing. They banding together and they started fighting. It's actually, sweeping people. You know what I'm saying? Those armies that came down there, they used guerrilla warfare. So they fought back, against that. You know what I'm saying? So, in Florida, so that is something that's part of our culture, and we pass it down. We talk about it, and we pass it down. And I would go on to say too, um, we need to further teach that and understand, methods of resistance. I put it like that. You know, um, So when our people are harmed or somebody tries to come against us, on a mass scale level, or even on an individual level, our people we'll know how to defend ourselves. Like that, we really need that. Like that's essential, for us to teach that and keep that aspect, of our culture intact. So it was, it was actually said that. Uh, there was a lieutenant colonel, that went down to Florida, and was fighting. And what he said, it wasn't an Indian war. People tagged it as an Indian wars, basically trying to remove, our native people from their land to reservations. He said, man, we're really fighting black people down here. You know what I'm saying? But basically, to put it in a to actually put the actual term, you know, the what he really said. Say, man, we down here fighting a bunch of niggas. You know what I'm saying? We not fighting no Indians. You know, so that's a fact. So basically, and like I said before, our native people, we basically black. You come down, Seminole people, which they say, you know, they try to make it like it's some type of light-skinned Indian person, but these were black people, native to this land, and our African ancestors. We band together, the Maroon counties. They came, escaping from plantations, joined our brothers down, our Seminole, like I said, our Seminole brothers down in Florida, and they fought together. You know, so you know, that happened, you know, and that's something that, you know, that needs to be understood as well. You know what I'm saying? That's part of our culture. You know, we talk about that. We pass on some, and another thing they won't mention in the history books because certain things they were defeated guerrilla warfare. You know, it's you're not going to be taught that in school. You know, you basically got to go dig for it. You know, they have records on it that they were defeated, but you know, they don't want to admit defeat in the history books. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that's one of the things, you know, about, you know, them fighting those, like I said, those so-called Indian wars. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, General Thomas Sidney Jessup, you know, and that was said during the second Seminole War in Florida. Jessup wrote in 1837. General Thomas Sidney Jessup wrote, "This you may be assured is a Negro, not an Indian war." See, so that's what I'm saying. Like that, we're not taught that in school. You know what I'm saying? That has to be passed down through in which we do. You know, either pass it down through talking about it, you know, or we end up learning about it. You know what I'm saying? Like me, even me. You know what I'm saying? Through, you know, finding out about it, just digging, you know what I'm saying, want to know the history and, you know, things like, or led to it. Now, I honestly feel too, like I said, mentioned about the ancestors, they'll lead you to it. You know, our people want, like some of us, we have to be light bearers, and we come to bring the truth to our people and actually, you know, bring light, wake up our people, you know what I'm saying, so we can, you know, progress further. You know, so that's part of our culture, the revolutionary aspect, you know, of our people. That's part of our culture. I would say a part of our culture as well, you know what I'm saying, giving reverence to, you know, our ancestors, you know. So I would say some of us, like I said, we are light bearers, and I would say even our ancestors, you know, they want us to know. They want us to bring the truth. They are working through us, you know, to help bring the truth, you know, to our people. So like I said, sometimes, you know, you just got to dig for this type of knowledge. You usually not going to learn it or find out about it just reading no history books. Actually, like I said, they don't want us to know this anyway. You know, in the history books, they're not going to, you know, talk about their defeat and how they suffered defeat in certain wars, you know, the so-called Indian wars, you know, which they were fighting our people. They were fighting black people, you know, and like I said, we were fighting back so much so to, you know, stop slavery to where, you know, they end up suffering defeat, you know, in some of these wars, you know, that they said were Indian wars. But that's something that, you know, like I said, that's part of our culture. You know, we you know, we end up finding out about it, being led to it, like I said, by the ancestral spirit, of ancestral guidance, you know, that we get, you know, from our people that have passed on. They want us to know, they want us to bring the light, you know, to our people and be light bearers. So sometimes we're led to it in that sense. You know, so I would say that's part of our culture. Another thing, you know, I talked about, you know, with the HBCUs, Battle of the Bands, step shows, you know, homecoming games, you know, all the events tied around homecoming. That's part of our culture, man. You know what I'm saying? So that's something, and you can't deny that. You know, I don't know no black person that, you know, has not been to homecoming, HBCU, Battle of the Bands, step show, other events around homecoming, you know, around campus, or just, you know, some form of game, big time game, Grambling and Prairie View. You know what I'm saying? What else? That's, man, the classic, all different type of classics. You know what I'm saying? Grambling versus Southern. Um, um, what else? Magic City class. It's just so many it's so many different, aspects, man, of our culture, HBCUs that has been passed down. You know what I'm saying? And it's a great experience. I didn't, me myself, I didn't go to HBCU, but I experienced it. And most also black people that may not went to a HBCU, they get the experience because it's gonna be like a trickle down effect. You're gonna know somebody that went to a HBCU or go to a game or some form of fashion, step show, whatever it may be, homecoming game at HBCU. So you're gonna be affected by it, because that's just part of our culture. It's contagious like that, So, I would say that, that's part of our culture. Nation Islam. And I mentioned, that's part of our culture. So everybody know about Elijah Muhammad, Minister Louis Farrakhan. Well, Elijah Muhammad, of course, he started the Nation Islam, but then Mr. Louis Farrakhan, he kind of like took it over, or kind of like after it was, pretty much after it, with just Elijah Muhammad, after him, and it was, pretty much just became non-existent, you know what I'm saying? Minister Louis Farrakhan, he took it up, and then, he expanded it after that, after the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, died, and then it pretty much became non-existent, So everybody knows that, everybody knows about the Nation of Islam, the work they do, brothers on the corner selling bean pies, selling final call. That's part of our culture. Whether you join the Nation of Islam or not, or be a part of it, you know anything about it, you support it, that's part of our culture, and in speaking on in a religious aspect as well, the black church, we know most black people go to church on Sunday. Everybody don't, because some other denominations, but most black people go to church on Sundays. That's part of our culture. We go to church, then what we do after church, we going out to eat. You know what I'm saying? We getting some fried chicken or whatever it may be. You know what I'm saying? And eating with the family or spending time with the family. Even if we not, everybody ain't eating fried chicken, but I'm saying, we spending some time with the family. That's part of our culture. You know what I'm saying? And not every black person, don't go to church, and I understand that, what I'm saying? I'm not a, church goer myself like that, but that's part of our culture. That's just what we do, and we wholeheartedly, most of our people, what I'm saying, are Christian or whatever, and that's basically one of our things, food wise. Yams, you know what I'm saying? Yams actually come from Africa. That's a staple of our, and it's a difference. Sweet potato, I'm not talking about sweet potatoes, I'm talking about yams. It's an African, root vegetable, it come from Africa. And what happened was some of our people coming over on the slave ship, being a slave, they brought certain plants with them. Yams was one of them. I know for a fact, black people, man, Thanksgiving, Christmas, it's gonna be somewhere. It's gonna be a dish. Somebody gonna have some candied yams or some form of yams, that they done made. Yam casserole, whatever it may be. You know what I'm saying? At a gathering, where black people, what I'm saying, get together, whatever, for those holidays. So, that's a part of our culture. So, all I say, I don't know no family that don't, we eating some yams, for the holidays. And even me, like I said, I had to say, hey, the holidays, I'm not like a holiday person like that. Like I just, big on holidays. Like I got Christmas lights and trees, and hey man, I don't do all that. But I'm gonna eat some yams though. I will eat them candy yams for the holidays. You know what I'm saying? Cause I love it. You know what I'm saying? I pretty sure, a lot of other, our people out there. That's part of our culture. And that's what we do. The food aspect of it, that's one part of it. That's our culture, man. You know what I'm saying? That's just ingrained. Then you got, like I said, we got greens and other stuff like that. We got, all the other food, and I ain't gonna even comment on them. Some of the stuff that, come out of slavery and all that, but I'm not gonna, Yeah, that eating or whatever, I'm not, I'm not advocating that. I'm not gonna say that, you know what I'm saying? But yams is one of the things that I would say is part of our culture, and and I respect that, you know, and I just had to say that, on that aspect of it. Other things, man, like I would say, um, music, you know, we created because that African drum. This is what people don't realize. That African drum is just in our spirit. And so when you hear them bass lines in our music, the R&B, the hip hop, jazz, as well, a bit of an element, but mainly the horn or whatever, the piano, things of that nature. But we created jazz. We created blues music. We created rock and roll, rhythm and blues, hip hop. Um, it's other forms, of music out there. Probably can't. I'm trying to think. Trying to think. It's some other forms of music that I'm not. Let me see. I'm trying to think. Yeah, Zydeco. Zydeco music was said was created by Black Creole people. So it's so many different things we created while we've been here. And I would even go to speak on also, and the reason like our music is so powerful because we have great oratorical skills, great orators, in our music, and even I would relate this as well, even to the church, or even to, people that are our historians, African American historians, our certain leaders, they have great, or they are great orators. They have great oratorical skills to where, you know, that prowess is evident, in them, in what they do, in their craft, in whatever form of music. Also, congregation wise, in the church, the preachers or the ministers that have the largest congregation, they have the best oratorical skill. Great orators. That's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? That's how we are, and we pass down our history, through oratory, through, oral tradition, so that's part of our culture, having that oratorical prowess, you know what I'm saying? Great orators. That's us, you know. So um, I and it's expressed in wisdom too. The wisdom we had, we pass it down. A lot of people don't know about the Psalms in the Bible. You know what I'm saying? Those are the Psalms of Solomon. They say the Psalms of David, Psalms of Solomon. Psalms of Solomon, or whatever. You know, the Psalms of Akhenaten. The ancient Pharaoh. You know what I'm saying? The ancient Kemet. So they renamed to be the Psalms of Solomon, but that history, that's another, I would have to just talk about. It's a whole nother story. But yeah, the Psalms of Solomon. I mentioned David, but the Songs of Solomon, actually the Songs of Akhenaten, which is that ancient wisdom, that oratory that I'm talking about, that wisdom that like it's like coming like it's like how your great grandmama, or what I'm saying, your grandmom or your uncle, what I'm saying, to share some wisdom with you, so like that, that's what we have, so yeah, I had to get on here and do this video because when people talk about we ain't got no culture, that's a lie. I'm just calling you right out. That's a lie. You know what I'm saying? To try to make us or diminish our greatness, our uniqueness, our creativity, you know what I'm saying? Our creativeness, they try to diminish that. No. Not at all. You know what I'm saying? Not well, I know, and I can bring some light to the fact that we do have a culture. I'm not, no, I'm not gonna let nobody say that, you know what I'm saying, because it's wrong. But anyway, I just want to get on here and say that. Oh, just had to bring some clarification to the matter. But anyway, I'm gonna get up off her. Hope y'all out there doing well, living life full of love and happiness. Uh, you know, doing great. And strive for greatness every day. I appreciate y'all out there. Watching my videos, liking, sharing, commenting. We can agree. We can disagree. We disagree, we can hash it out. But I'm just asking y'all, hey, be respectful towards me, be respectful towards y'all. But anyway, to the next one, y'all. Love y'all. All right, y'all.